For this video, I'm going to show you very quickly how you want to treat your inks layers. Your inks layers is the part of your Photoshop file that you want to create all your line work. So basically, I'm just outlining this whole portrait. So if I start with a portrait where I haven't done anything, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. And I can do that by clicking on the new layer button. It's the plus at the bottom of my layers palette. And I'm going to rename this layer and I'm going to call it inks. That's exactly how they do it in the illustration industry. It is called the inks layer, but it means really the outline of the drawing that you're doing. So I'm going to click the enter button to get that named. And then I'm going to go over to my brush tool. And I've been working with a brush that has some texture to it. I've been using Kyle Ultimate Hard Pencil, but you can certainly try any of these other fancy drawing brushes. They tend to look really nice and natural as you're drawing your lines. And the other thing that I do with my drawing color is I actually switch to a more natural color, like a light brown, or sorry, a darker brown, because I think it's more natural for portraiture. So basically, instead of that hard black, I'm just moving up in the value scale. I went to the orange section for hue, and then I went just above the black layer so that I can work with this dark brown pencil. And when I'm doing my ink layer, I like to zoom in. So if you don't have your navigator out, you can go to your window menu and grab your navigator. And then your navigator will let you zoom in or zoom out with the slider, but it'll also let you drag the orange box around to navigate to the different areas of your file as you go. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this chiseled brush here and I'm working with a pixel size of 8. Depending on the size of your file, you may have to change your brush size as you go. Remember your bracket keys. Those are the keys that look like this on your keyboard. This brush is going to make your, this bracket is going to make your brush smaller, and this bracket is going to make your brush bigger. Don't forget Control Z is going to go back a step. So I'm just Control Z-ing those lines. Just as a reminder when you need to go back a step or you make a mistake. Now, because I'm working in a separate layer here, it's perfectly fine to use your eraser if you need to use that eraser tool and erase any of your lines. So my eraser tool happens to be pretty large because I was using a large brush the last time with this, but because I'm working with a size 8 brush, I probably really only need my eraser tool to be no bigger than 10 pixels should I need it. So let's say I start, drawing my edges out here and I make a mistake and I go a little too far in, then I'm going to go to my eraser tool and I can backtrack. Now I'm not, the great thing is when I'm using my eraser tool is I'm not touching any of the real portrait. I'm not erasing that because I'm in my inks layer. So that's the advantage of doing your inks layer in a separate layer. You can erase and you will not erase any of your other layers. So again, the idea with your inks is just to go around the edges of things, and your pencil might come in really handy. I'm going to keep it nice and simple as I go, just kind of simplify it. I don't have to do every eyelash, obviously. I can just do some of the major lines that I see, like right over the eyelid here. And again, use your navigator to zoom in as you're working. I think it'll be a lot easier if you do that. I don't really like the way that looks. I'm going to take my eraser and start again. Now I could outline this as an entire shape if I wanted to. And I'm just doing my edges as I go. I'm pushing my orange box from my navigator. Remember, simplify things. It doesn't have to be perfect here, right? If you don't get every tiny little edge, it's not a problem. And I'm going to go all the way around most of my edges here. For my brush, again, I'm using an 8 pixel brush but depending on your image, you may have to go bigger or smaller. So control that as you need to, and definitely play around with some of these fancy artistic brushes. And you can work with the flow and make your brush a harder flow or a lighter flow, and that will definitely change the pressure or the amount of brush that sort of comes out as you go. Now I dropped my flow to 17, and you can see that is a lot lighter. I don't really like how that looks, but just to show you, if you need to go lighter on your edges, you can. So I'm back up to the 30s, which I think is much better for my edges to define them. So I'm going around my edges. Okay, so I've pretty much gone through around all of my edges. And I'm going to zoom out, and you can see that that's pretty complete all the way around. And now I'm going to be ready for a layer called the flats, which I'll show in a next tutorial. And so what your flats layer is just laying out the basic colors of the entire composition. And from the flats, we'll then talk about some shading, which some artists will call rendering, and those will be in separate layers called shadows, midtones, and highlights. For now, what I would do once my inks are done is I would go to my File menu, Save As, and now I'm going to call this Portrait Inks, just so I remember what I was working on here. And then make sure you're navigating to the photography shortcut folder, to the right class, saving everything in your own folder.